Welcome, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous nations on whose traditional territory we're gathered today in different parts of our province, and that I am speaking to you from Lekwungen-speaking territories, the home of the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, here at the legislature in Victoria. My name is Murray Rankin. I am the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and I'm very honored to serve as the MC today as we announce an historic partnership that represents a significant step forward in building a resilient relationship, government-to-government relationship between the Tahltan Nation and the province of British Columbia. Today's announcement is about the evolving relationship between our governments. It's about working together to build on other collaborative efforts. And it's about supporting the necessary conditions for the Tahltans to further achieve self-sufficiency and incrementally regain sovereignty over their lands and resources. Perhaps most significantly, it's about a better future for Tahltans and all British Columbians. I'd now like to call upon Chief Marie Kwok of the Iskut Band Council to speak about the agreement.
Good morning. The Shared Prosperity Agreement is, it's very exciting for us to announce this agreement between the province of BC and our Tahltan Nation. It's a agreement that allows us to build a deeper government-to-government relationship between the two parties, and it's based on the recognition of Tahltan title and rights. It also encompasses a consent-based decision-making process, and this will form a collaborative working government-to-government relationship between the two parties. It's a very exciting day for us. This is a landmark agreement for our nation as well. This gives our people more say in the processes that happen. And we know that in order for a partnership to be successful, both parties have to be a part of the decision making. I'm excited about the regulatory processes that we are going to see changes in. And the fact that we're going to have funding for the land planning process is also a big step forward, because we need the land planning processes for certainty for all parties who have interests in our lands, and for our people to lead this land planning process, because they are the ones who have to deal with all the impacts. But I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to working with the province on this agreement and the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Kwok. I'm excited as well about working together on behalf of the province. I can say that as we implement this important agreement. I'd now like to call on and introduce Chad Norman Day, who is the president of the Tahltan Central Government, to speak.
Chachalona Hotia. Good morning, everyone. Chad Norman Day, Ushia. Very exciting day today with this shared prosperity agreement. This is the first time I've spoken publicly since the sad news was learned about the 215 children in Kamloops, and I really wanted to just give a shout out to my father, who I always include in my name. That's Norman Day. He was a residential school survivor. And you know, my father always taught me that we as Tahltan people are very resilient, very strong, And he was always so focused on moving forward, contributing back to the nation, and getting us back to a place where we could not only go through the stages of healing as he has, but to look forward and to really focus on being prosperous for future generations. He was able to give me a better life than he had. I'm trying to do the same thing for my children. And I feel like an agreement like this really showcases the strength, the commitment, the history of our people. And I'm extremely excited that we're working with a government that recognizes that Indigenous people across this province and across this country don't just deserve equality as individuals, but there's more and more of a recognition that we also deserve equality as nations. And that to me is what's so exciting about this, is that we're getting closer and closer to a true nation to nation relationship, which is ultimately going to make sure that Tahltan territory has more certainty and more prosperity for all stakeholders. And I'm extremely excited to implement this agreement. I've always taken my hat off to the province for this very progressive DRIPA legislation and these laws, but it all depends on how it gets implemented. And I'm personally aiming to make sure that BC and the Tahltan can work hand in hand in a good way and develop some best practices so that this DRIPA legislation does work and it is successful for us as Tahltan, for the province, and for all those stakeholders that utilize Tahltan territory so that we all prosper together as one. So very excited, looking forward to getting to work. And again, my heart goes out to all those people across this province and Canada that continue to heal and learn following some of the sad news that we learned in Kamloops. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, President Chad Norman Day, and thank you for grounding us in the history that has brought us to this special place and reminding us of the legacy of residential schools. Speaking of your father, a survivor, Mr. Norman Day, and I take my hat off to you and to the people who've suffered as a consequence of the knowledge that we've gained over the last few days. Thank you for that. And I too look forward to the future where we collaborate government to government. That is our commitment to you and to the people of British Columbia. I'd now like to call upon my friend, Mr. Nathan Cullen, Minister of State for Lands and Natural Resource Operations, to speak about the agreement from the perspective of the British Columbia government. Minister Cullen.
Thank you very much, Minister Rankin, and good morning, everyone. I'm joining you here today from traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en people in Gidimt'en, here in my home in Smithers. So nice to see you all virtually, and hopefully soon we'll be able to gather together in ways that are a bit more comfortable and traditional. It's an honor for me to be taking part in the ceremony, and I thank both Chief Kwok and President Day for their comments in grounding what this conversation really is about. It's certainly about this agreement that we are acknowledging today, but it is also about changing the relationship between our two governments. And as Chad Norman Day said, incrementally bringing back that sovereignty and realizing the dream of a true nation-to-nation relationship. It's an honor for me to be taking part in this announcement on behalf of my colleague, Minister Bruce Ralston, who's BC's Minister of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation, and the other ministers who are signatories to this shared prosperity agreement. I'm honored to be with you all. I think the word historic gets thrown around quite a bit these days. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's more rhetoric. I think today acknowledging what this agreement means for now, and as importantly, what it means for the future. We can, I believe, refer to this as historic. We're gathered to celebrate an economic partnership between the Tahltan Central Government, the Iskut Band Council, the Tahltan Band Council, and the province of British Columbia. This shared prosperity agreement creates a foundation, the building blocks, if you will, upon which we can achieve some of those long-term comprehensive reconciliation and land use predictability, and do that through collaboration, not by fiat from Victoria. In partnership, we are opening the door to responsible mineral development to bring further economic prosperity for the members of the Tahltan Nation, who have truly become a success story in many regards for many nations, not just across British Columbia and Canada, but around the world. This agreement, commits both governments to accelerate the negotiations of an economic-oriented, comprehensive reconciliation agreement, and also to involve our federal partners in those negotiations, which is obviously critical. We are also agreeing to develop in partnership a land use plan, with the first phase must be completed by 2023. The province, as mentioned, is providing $20 million to the Tahltan Central Government to support economic growth and reconciliation and to implement this agreement. We are working together as partners to help create a better future for Tahltan members, and in turn, for a better future for all British Columbians. In my role as Minister of State for Lands and Natural Resource Operations, I'm very honored to work alongside my colleague, Minister Conroy, and honored to help build these partnerships. I served as the Member of Parliament for a number of years for Skeena, which represented the Northwest in Parliament in Canada. And it was important to me during that time to try to advance reconciliation and sustainable development wherever we could. The reflections I have today is how far we've come and how much further we have to go. That from where we were, say, 15, 20 years ago, some of the agreements we are making today are somewhat unimaginable, but yet for meeting the full promise of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, we have some work yet to do, obviously. As I've said before, I think what I believe is in British Columbia is a truly integrated approach. Chief Kwok talked about this, and it means we have to achieve that balance between protecting natural and cultural values, ensuring healthy economic resources for our communities. This is never easy work. If it were easy, we would have done it before. But it's incredibly important that we have agreements like this in place, because then we can build upon them and make life better for everyone and for the places that we live and represent. I want to thank everyone for being a part of this today and for my few comments. I feel proud of this moment. I feel humbled of the work that's ahead of us, because in celebrating this type of partnership, it's making, as President Day said, the words that are written in that act closer to reality. When I took this current role, I was committed to making every effort I could, and as President Day reminded me a while ago, I needed to become the champion and continue the work as a champion for the Tahltan in Victoria and other places. And I hope this moves us a little further along in that direction. I do believe this belongs to all of us, and I am encouraged and enthusiastic about meeting the goals that we've set out for ourselves and for each other. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Minister Cullen, for your remarks. And speaking of that pride that we have in this agreement, and I know that word historic does get thrown around a lot, but I think we are at the cusp of a resilient government-to-government relationship, and I'm honored to bear witness to that as the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. So with that said, I'd like to thank all of the people who joined us virtually today, and now call upon Rick Devereaux, who I think will monitor any media questions that might come, and over to you.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all the media on the line, if you have a question, please press *1 to enter the queue. That's *1, and everyone called upon will get a chance for a question and a follow-up. Also, please take yourself off mute. You will not be audible until your name is called. We'll start with Lisa Cordasco of The Sun. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm wondering what happens to the Tahltan request to government to suspend all mining operations in its territory in the context of this agreement.
Minister Cullen, are you able to take that one? I think you're on mute.
Morning, Lisa. It's well, I think in specific reference, you're talking about jade and placer mining specifically. So a couple of things on that. One is we have heard the concerns expressed by the Tahltan Nation with regards to the practices of too many in that industry. We share those concerns. It has been, I think, a legacy of how previous governments looked at not just the environment, but rights and title, and permitted activities that did not properly respect the territories upon which they were taking place. We've made a recommendation. We're just going through the final processes of a 24-month order in effect. It has to go through one last thing. It's being done under the Environmental and Land Use Act to prohibit placer jade mining permitting decisions in the Northwest and Northeast and Central mining regions, so throughout many territories. That 2-year period allows us time to work with the Tahltan central government on what needs to happen next. There's more to be done on this. We also have some recommendations of including hard rock mining as well as placers, so that we're not missing any aspects of the industry. And I know the Tahltan have had some very direct and difficult conversations with some of the operators and have been pushing the province, frankly, and they should be, with respect to the way that this industry is regulated, or in some cases not.
I do have a follow-up.
Just a second, Lisa. We're going to go to President Day for a moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarifying comment that Tahltan aren't opposed to all mining ventures. We've never asked the province to suspend all mining ventures. We have a thriving mineral exploration industry and a thriving mining industry, and we're very proud of the partnerships that we have with industry and with government in regards to that kind of work in Tahltan territory. Very confident that we'll be able to work out the jade and placer mining issues that we have in the territory, and we're not opposed to those kind of industries continuing. It just needs to be done in the right way, because as one wise person said that I heard on an interview last week, Indigenous people are often open for business. They're just not open for exploitation. So I'm very confident that we'll get through those issues, and I've had constant contact with various ministers and others from the Ministry of Energy and Mines to make sure that we can address these jade and placer issues in a timely fashion. Thanks.
And thanks, Lisa. You have a follow-up?
Yes, I would like to ask the Tahltan leadership what you envision will come from this first phase of the agreement, which isn't expected, I think I understood it to say 2023. What would you like to see first off in an agreement like that?
I think a big part of what we're looking for is certainty on the land base. Tahltans have 11% of British Columbia. A large portion of our territory is open for development, but there are some very sensitive areas which will not be open that currently we have claims on. We have a lot of claims around some of our communities, some of our burial sites, and I think that we've been grappling with those for years because we didn't have the relationship and the structure that we're going to have through DRIPA and through agreements like this. So I'm really looking forward to getting a lot more land certainty through the land use planning process, and also to agree on some amendments to the way that we go through the process with the province before development does take place. So that's probably going to be some of the early work, because we all want to see more more certainty and prosperity on the land base in Tahltan territory.
Next, we'll go to Richard Zussman from Global. Go ahead, Richard.
Congratulations on the agreement. This is for Minister Rankin. Minister, if other First Nations put forward proposals for deferral of old growth forest, should those First Nations expect the deferral to be granted as we saw with the Three Nations yesterday?
Well, thanks, Richard. I can tell you that Minister Conroy has been in receipt of a number of those kind of applications for deferrals and has announced publicly that there will be decisions made on those deferrals as soon as this summer, as early as this summer. And so I'm expecting that there'll be conversations going forward. Each nation has a different perspective on old growth, and that will be reflected in the dialogue that occurs. But the ministries involved are standing by, and we're expecting a robust dialogue on that over the next few weeks and months.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, how important is this issue, Minister, in the larger piece of reconciliation in terms of having these conversations around old growth with these with First Nations?
I think it's a critical part of reconciliation. We have so many things that we are going to go forward on under DRIPA, but every minister, as you know, has in his or her mandate letter a commitment to reconciliation that will be held accountable to the people of British Columbia for our delivery on reconciliation initiatives. I think forestry is one very important part. It's, after all, still the basis of many of our regional economies and critically important to the future of this province. The Premier's intention paper, along with Minister Conroy, shows that we have a new vision for forestry, and it very much involves Indigenous people and very much will lead to, I hope, sincere and honest reconciliation, not just words but action.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Joshua Azizi from CFTK. Go ahead, Joshua.
Hi, everyone. This is a bit of a broad question, but I was just wondering if I'd be able to get some more information about what exactly this new agreement will look like in practice when it's rolled out. I don't know if there's anyone who might be able to answer that.
Maybe I can give you the Coles notes just to start us off, and President Day or Chief Quacker McPhee might want to step in. There's 5 larger elements to it, Joshua. There's the economic development and investment, which we've given a bit of time to today. There's also an aspect in the agreement around social, cultural, and health, lands and environmental stewardship, which includes, as President Day talked about, land use planning and wildlife. The 4th one is enhanced shared and consent-based decision-making, which I think might speak a bit to Richard's earlier question, as well as support for and recognition for Tahltan inherent governance and jurisdiction. So there's a large governance piece. We can get you all the specific details of what's in the foundation agreement that's been made available, but you can see it's very comprehensive and moves us from the province's perspective much further along the path towards reconciliation with the Tahltan, and huge aspects like co-decision making, co-stewardship. These are a number of issues that not just the Tahltan but others have brought forward to the government and are envisioned with the Declaration Act and the way of doing business differently. And it's a contemplation for not just government in this case, but also industry, as President Day has talked about. And I would say British Columbians at large, those with conservation concerns, those with economic concerns, that the new state of doing business, they can look to agreements like this for what those key elements will be, and that they're comprehensive. They're not one-off agreements. They will affect every aspect of the way the government and the Tahltan, from my perspective, will be talking to one another and working together in many years to come.
Joshua, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. I was also wondering if this plan might include any outlines or frameworks that might be able to kind of guide any disagreements between the two governments. Like if the plan has any frameworks that could guide any disagreements, especially in regards to land use planning, if those ever come up. Is that something that the plan might address?
I can say with some confidence, yes, and that's what the governance and co-management negotiations will encompass. How do we make these decisions with respect to the land? We know what it looks like when we don't have these agreements. Decisions are not as durable. It creates, I would argue, more uncertainty and poorer results on the land base, and certainly for the local communities impacted, because the nation's voice is not there. The traditional knowledge has not been brought forward. I'm talking about historically, and in too many cases today. I don't know if the Tahltan representatives have a different point of view, but things like dispute resolution and how we manage those tension points, which are inevitable in a government-to-government relationship, are also envisioned in that negotiation, which is to be completed this year.
Yeah, those aspects of the agreement are always key. We've had those kind of disagreements in the past, sometimes with mining, sometimes with other industries, and we've always been able to navigate it in a good way. So I envision the same thing happening here.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Nelson Bennett of Business in Vancouver. Go ahead, Nelson.
Yes, this is the second reconciliation agreement I can think of that this government has signed, government to government or nation to nation. The other one being the Wet'suwet'en agreement. I'm just wondering how they seem very much like interim treaty agreements, but without the word treaty in it. I'm just wondering if you could explain how they actually differ from a treaty agreement, which typically requires the ceding of some land in exchange for defined title land. How do these agreements, or specifically this one, how does it differ from a treaty agreement?
Perhaps I could start that and invite any others that wish to join in. The province is committed to working with nations that wish to enter treaty, and we are doing many treaty negotiations across the land base right now, of course, but we're also open to other kinds of agreements, comprehensive reconciliation agreements that may or may not culminate in a treaty being one that is constitutionally protected and recognized under Section 35 of the Constitution Act. But not every nation wants that kind of arrangement. Not every nation wants the fiscal and other aspects of that agreement, of those kind of treaties. So comprehensive reconciliation agreements have been entered into with a number of nations. Lake Babine is a recent example of a comprehensive reconciliation agreement. With the Heiltsuk, we've done another agreement that is pretty foundational. And of course, with the Sisha, formerly known as the Sechelt people, we're doing another agreement of that kind outside of treaty. So we are hoping to work with nations as they on the terms that they wish in order to proceed. And this is a great example, a stepping stone, which I think would, I hope, culminate in a even more comprehensive reconciliation agreement with the Tahltan central government.
Nelson, do you have a follow-up?
Well, yeah, I get that. I'm still not sure how these reconciliation agreements, what the key differences are between them and a full treaty.
Well, there's a number of them. First of all, they will comprehensive reconciliation agreements will have a land base. They'll have they'll speak to forestry. In the case of the Heiltsuk, of course, there's a lot of fisheries, as you'd expect a coastal community to have issues with fisheries and so on. What they don't have is constitutional protection the way that a treaty would. A treaty is acknowledged as Aboriginal and treaty rights is a phrase in the Constitution. And the Niska, of course, have such a treaty. The Tsawwassen have a treaty in our province, the Manuth as well. These are examples of treaties. But they have very elaborate fiscal arrangements that are set out in treaty. They have a number of other provisions about taxation and the like. A comprehensive reconciliation agreement need not have those provisions. But after a while in a comprehensive reconciliation agreement, some nations have indicated that that would be a stepping stone to treaty. Others don't wish to be part of the BC Treaty Commission process. We are open to arrangements on the ground as individual nations wish us to entertain.
Thanks very much, everyone. That's all the time we have for today. Have a good day.